Elevating Voices for Long-Lasting Change. I'm Doreen Marshall, the Vice President of Mission Engagement at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and I'm so glad to have you join us today for today's town hall discussion. This is another one in our series on elevating voices for long-lasting change, and today we're going to talk about strengthening mental health support and connection within the Black community. The goal of today's session is to highlight and kind of engage peer and professional community-led initiatives that are giving way to hope and meaningful conversations about mental health and suicide prevention. I'm thrilled today to be joined by three panelists, and we couldn't ask for a better group to talk about this topic. Today I have with me Dr. Donna Barnes, Mr. Lorenzo Lewis, and Dr. Chinwe Williams, and I will take a few minutes and introduce each of them in a little more detail. Donna Barnes is currently the founder and CEO of DHB Wellness and Associates, where she conducts life coaching, grief recovery, and suicide prevention training on suicide risk management. Dr. Barnes is also the and president of the National Organization for People of Color, NOPCUS, founded in 1998. Prevention and intervention, faculty, staff, and students, as well as the community, on how to recognize the mental crisis. Barnes and I are longtime colleagues. I'll have her join the discussion today. Mr. Lewis is the CEO and founder of the Confess Project, to an incarcerated mother with depression, anxiety, and anger throughout his youth, to the point of being at risk for re-entering the system. From this, through the Confess Project, which for a lot of an initiative that confronts the stigma around mental health for men of color. A two-sided approach, researching the issues within the individual and within society. Lorenzo's life story and his life on behavioral health and social science issues surrounding the Black male identity. And we also have Dr. Chinwe Williams, a licensed and board certified therapist and the owner of Meaningful Solutions and Consulting. She has 18 years of professional experience, including work in public school systems, hospitals, university, faith, and corporate work settings. A former university professor, published journal author, has presented numerous state and local national conferences, and is a frequently invited expert, blogs, articles, and podcasts on mental wellness, including today.com, CNET, and trauma recovery, and adult wellness. So thank you to the three of you. I'm wondering if we can just to have each of you tell us a little bit about your work and any lessons learned you from your work so far. Dr. Barnes, why don't we start with you?
Okay, you were breaking up so much, Dr. Marshall. I'm wondering if I'm breaking up also. Am I breaking up, Dr. Williams or Lorenzo? I'm doing good? Okay. I started for a long time ago. When I lost my son to suicide in 1990, I started searching for resources, other people of color to talk to, and it took me about 4 years before I got to that point. NOPCUS was founded not because there's a difference in suicide, ethnic, whatever, cultures. There's not really a difference. Suicide is suicide. It knows no culture, knows no age, it knows no class. And the reason it was founded is because people in my community were not talking about it. And I wanted to create a space where we could come and talk about it amongst ourselves. We gave conferences for 10 years. And it started basically because of AFSP. I had met the late Karen Dunn Maxon, may she rest in power. She gave me a call one day and said, you know, Donna, I kind of wanted to talk to you about a member in my support group. She's the only Black person, and she talks all the time about not having another Black person to relate to. And I'm wondering if you could give her a call. In fact, I'm wondering if you could get as many Black folks together and create some sort of a space for them. And I says, wow, Karen, do you think that's something I could do that would be accepted? And so that was the beginning of Noctis. She helped me get it started. She helped me get funded from the national office to do our very first conference, and we were off and running. So that's why Noctis was founded. The other thing that I do is I teach suicide risk management to medical students at Howard University's Department of Psychiatry, because when they come out of medical school and become physicians, people are going to look to them if they have a suicidal
Mhm.
aunt, uncle, mother, father, child, and I need them to be equipped and knowledgeable about suicide because they don't learn that much about it in medical school. But I'm going to stop talking because I feel like I've talked too much. But so that's all I have to say for now. Thank you, Doreen.
Thanks, Donna. Lorenzo?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, inspired by Dr. Barnes, her story, and similar like mine. I grew up in my aunt's beauty salon, right? So as a kid, I started going to a beauty salon by the name of Unique Hair Fashions in the heart of the Black community here in Little Rock, Arkansas. Very urban community, busy community rather, but seeing a lot of foot traffic coming to this beauty shop. And so there as a kid, where I came in contact with my first mentor, where I saw my aunt and the other operators there, the stylists, really transform people's life just by a conversation, by listening, by validating them. And that's simply what we're doing with the Confess Project. We're training Black men, particularly barbers, to be mental health advocates. And so taking that same childhood experience and taking it to another level, and now created a movement of doing the work now across 16 cities, training over 200 men to be mental health advocates for their clients. I was inspired also because of my own journey of incarceration and depression that I dealt with in my youth. And I realized that I had a very great connection personally, worked in the field for a while as well. And so I'm glad that our work is rooted in truly showing up for communities, particularly right now for Black men, for young men, and their families and the counterparts that come through barbershops across America. So again, glad to be here and look forward to having this conversation.
Great. Dr. Williams?
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to be with you. I feel like, obviously I'm among an esteemed panel, and I'm already inspired hearing each of your stories. So my background in mental health came pretty early in my professional career. My very first job out of my master's program was working at a school, at a high school specifically, and that was not my training. I was trained as a mental health counselor, not a school counselor, but at that particular time, Georgia declared school counseling as a high need area. So I was really fortunate to sort of jump into an environment that I thought I knew, but I learned so much very, very quickly. And the school that I worked at was very racially, ethnically, socioeconomically diverse, which was really unique. There were only two high schools in the city. And I will say that my introduction to suicide prevention and awareness came about 2 years into my tenure. There was a student that I met doing a guidance program with a fellow therapist. We were talking about relaxation and guided imagery. And I remember to this day, he was sitting at the front of the class and he just looked at me wide eyed with big brown eyes, just sort of taking in all of the information. And you can see that he was just really soaking it in. Well, a year later, he took his life, and like many professionals, like many just people who care as part of the community, you ask yourself so many questions about, was there anything more that I could have done as a professional to prevent this tragic experience? And he was a special ed student. He was also a very popular football player and a beautiful, beautiful, kind heart. And so that's something that that really stands out to me in my career. And just on a personal level, a more personal level, I am the mom of two young boys, 9 and 5 years old, and my eldest, Braden, was diagnosed at 3 years old as having autism spectrum disorder. And I've got to tell you, even as a professional doing this work and knowing so much about mental health, that was a really difficult journey for myself and for my family. And for some who may not know, the research is pretty clear about how mothers in particular of children on the spectrum experience twice as much anxiety and depression as the general population. And I, in doing my research and gathering information in order to prepare myself and my family for the journey ahead, it went from an intellectual exercise to, whoa, this is happening to me. I was feeling anxiety. I was feeling depression. I'm happy to say that we're on the other side. My son is doing extremely well. He's amazing. He's brilliant. But that really was a challenging time for myself and my family. So currently, I am working with schools and nonprofits and faith-based communities and for-profit organizations around mental health awareness, recognizing the signs of anxiety, depression, trauma symptoms, and recognizing those signs early, because as all of us know here on this panel, early intervention is so key. So thank you again. I'm so happy for this discussion.
I love what each of you shared, and I know in our conversations in preparing for this discussion, we've talked about the ways communities interact around mental health, and sometimes communities do not interact around mental health, and those of us that are leaders within the mental health community are trying to inspire those conversations. What would you share for those of us that are attending today that you found looks unique when these conversations are happening within the Black community? What are the differences you've noticed, or the things that make those conversations just different in terms of how we connect people to help? Anyone can start.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's a very, my work again, our work that we do particularly is in a place where people are going to get grooming services. So imagine somebody's going to see their barber or stylist every week. They're in a position where a lot of these people probably would share more things with them than they would even share with their own doctor or their own rather psychiatrist. And so realizing that that power is a lot. One of the few challenges that we realized is stigma around mental health, stigma around talking about someone want to, take their lives by suicide or having suicidal ideation. And so realizing that, it's really important to break that ice in a place where people are already comfortable. They're having, they're being transformed with their look. And so they're also being able to have a very non-aggressive conversation there in that space. And so that's I think probably has been a challenge and a win all in one. And I'm really excited that we're being able to use that and lean into that. That's just one experience I can particularly share that I know that can be captivated across communities, is that really realizing that if it's not a barbershop or a salon, to really think about where, folks are really going, because to be very honest, in our community, we're talking about the Black community, people are still not comfortable with going to see professional help. And we have, we're very much on a journey to getting much more further, but we really have to captivate the potential that we have and really use that and take that to the next level.
What you're talking about really is about creating a safe space for the conversations and meeting people where they are and where they're talking about other important issues or other life matters, which makes the approach of the Confess Project so innovative in terms of taking mental health to the barbershops. Donna or Chinwe, I'm wondering if you have thoughts about that. Like, what are some unique aspects we all need to be aware of about how these conversations and how outreach for help happen in the Black community?
I just wanted to say one thing in reference to parents, because they're all a part of it. And I wrote a paper with David Lester and Denise Pazer about maybe 10 years ago, where Denise had collected some data on 56 parents who had lost one to suicide. And David Lester and I had analyzed it for her and published a paper. And one of the things that stood out was the parents were talking about what they wish they had done. And again, one of the things that stood out was they didn't listen to what people said about their child, because we think we know everything about our child. And if someone tries to tell us, we just kind of blow it off like, no, you don't know my child. I know my child more than anything. But there's things that we don't see and we can't see. There's things that they don't want us to see, and they don't show us. So we, as parents, we need to listen to what our neighbors, what our family members are saying about our child. And we need to take that to heart. I had a friend come over to visit. She told me my son was lonely. And I said, lonely? Oh, no, he has so many friends. He does this. He's always happy. And, I didn't see what she was saying and just blew it off. And I wish I had paid more attention to what she was saying. So I think we just need to listen to what other people are sharing about what they think they know about our child. It starts with at home with the parents.
Yes, I agree with that, Donna. And something I wanted to add, kind of going back to your question, Doreen, about some of the differences in terms of how the conversations are happening. I am fortunate to be able to work with a lot of Black families. I also work with white families, and I always say that if you start to paint a community with a broad brush, you're already losing, because we know that Black communities are not a monolith, right? So there's so many nuances, there's so many diverse experiences, and the way that individuals relate to mental health specifically really oftentimes it's depending upon how they were socialized. It's dependent upon educational levels, geographical location, and also personality differences. So it's important to realize that, there's diversity within groups. And at the same time, the research supports the fact that it's changing, but there's still a stigma for Black families around even discussing mental health and also seeking help, as Lorenzo and Donna has already talked about. It's hard, I think, for some of my families to admit that they're having psychological difficulties. And we know that that often comes from negative stereotypes around even what it means to be Black. There's still so much anti-Black rhetoric and racism that still exists despite all of the progress that we've made in our nation. And so what I have found as a difference, and this is just a small sample size with the folks that I've worked with over the years, is with white families, generally speaking, they seek mental health services for general well-being. They have had some exposure to it. There's not a whole lot of negative stigma around it. So that when they walk into my office, there's sort of a level of understanding that this is going to be something helpful. With my Black families, again, depending on their exposure and socialization, that's not always the case. They're afraid of being seen as negative or weak, or this is a failure on the part of the parent. My child needs services. Now we know that is not correct at all, but sometimes that's a prevailing thought. And what 79% of Black individuals in the nation identify as Christian. So oftentimes what I find is when it comes to discussions around mental health, my families are still utilizing religious coping tools such as prayer, seeking pastoral guidance. And those things are really, really helpful, but it's not that mental health services are just sort of randomly talked about at the kitchen table.
That's very true, Dr. Williams. And I might add that, and of course you know this, that there's a reason why we don't like to go outside of our community. Number one, the church is free. We don't have to pay for it. They know the family and they know us, so it's a lot easier to talk to them. If they go outside of that community, chances are they're going to have a white specialist come and talk to them. And what happens when you are not matching ethnically with your mental health services is that the information can get filtered differently because you only know what you experience. So when you're talking to, when you're white and your client is black and they're trying to explain to you what's going on, if they haven't experienced it, they're not going to get it. And so they don't have enough, the white physician doesn't have enough wherewithal to ask as many questions and to put themselves in their shoes so that they can try to understand them. So there's a major gap in the treatment. Plus, a lot of our children get misdiagnosed because of the lack of understanding. And that's very unfortunate. So they don't go. They don't go. And Dr. Alvin Poisson explained in his book with Amy Alexander, Lay My Burden Down. He wrote this about maybe 15 or 20 years ago, explained the history of why we don't go to get outside services. And it's very interesting. And I'm sorry to see that it hasn't changed, because I would think that things have changed with all the work that we've done. So I'm sorry that you're still experiencing that, Dr. Williams.
Yes, that's still the case, and that's why I'm so grateful for Lorenzo and all the work that people like him are doing to make mental health, even the discussion of mental health, so much more accessible. And to your point, Don, I just want to add quickly, I believe it's been this way for a long time, but the last stat that I saw indicated that 86% of psychologists were white.
Yes.
So 4%
Yes.
were Black psychologists. And then among psychiatrists, when I've got to tell you, here in the Atlanta area, on average, you have to wait 3 months right now for a psychiatrist. We, meaning Black psychiatrists, only make up 2% of the entire population of psychiatrists. So this issue of cultural competence is such an important point. And I always tell my families, because sometimes they'll call and they need support, but the wait is so long. You know, cultural competence really isn't about being a particular race or ethnicity. It's about having an understanding and awareness and an openness about diverse experiences and diverse interventions that match the cultural understanding of the client. So I'll stop right now, Lorenzo. I want you to weigh in.
Lorenzo, please.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm just very I'm very engaged to that point, you know, to think about you know, I always say that we are the change that we're looking for in our communities already lies within inside of us, right? And so to think about where again, we're training lay people such as barbers, folks who have already went and got a professional licensure, but that also have so much social capital, so much networks. I mean, we've realized that over 100 clients per barber, they can see almost up to 20 clients a week, if not more. And that is untapped potential to having those conversations, for being an advocate, for being a peer supporter. That is remarkable when you think about really some of the detrimental of the numbers in regards of access, in regards of how people feel about wanting to get services. And so I think that's the uniqueness that I realize. It's not so much as what we do is, you know, a barbershop obviously, yes, can be attractive. Yes, because of its historical, the venue and the history that it holds in the civil rights era, et cetera. But we're looking at how many of those folks that we know indefinitely need support from, you know, Dr. Williams here, or may need, you know, more support just of learning how to cope, right? Like learning how to general things that they can do, you know, meditation, journaling. These are very, like, you know, intermediate things that folks can put into practice. And it doesn't involve them actually having to go to a clinician. And so teaching them healthy behaviors will help to keep down any type of destruction long term. And that's what's really beautiful, I think, about having peer supporters in place, is because, again, you're speaking about, you know, we do work here in the Atlanta area as well. And so that is a very integrated turning point in knowing that we need more people that is resourceful, that is more aware, and that knows how to, that can show and step into the gaps. And we're going through these kind of rough moments.
Absolutely. I think our communities should continue with mentorship and in developing strong adult protective shields because we spend too much time talking about the risk factors. But if you have good, strong protective factors, it'll nullify the risk factors because the risk factors haven't changed in 25 years. I was reading an article in 1996, it was published, and they were talking about the risk factors among young black males and the suicide rate. Same thing. It was like the article was published yesterday. So we need to concentrate on things that you and Dr. Williams were talking about, Lorenzo, because it's so important. Like you were talking about chest in the community in Atlanta. Now, it doesn't have to have anything to do with mental health. It just has to be adults around kids who could lead by example and being able to talk to the kids. If the kids had somebody to relate to and to talk to, perhaps, we're halfway there.
It's such an important point. And since we are also talking about community resources, Dr. Williams, why don't you share a little bit more about what we were talking about with the chess group that Dr. Barnes just mentioned?
Yes, absolutely. I love that you mentioned that, Dr. Barnes, because what we know from the research is that high levels of social support, religious community involvement are protective factors against worsening mental health issues or challenges, and also peer interaction. And so there is a program that Dr. Barnes just mentioned related to peer interaction and civic engagement. It's called Chess in the Community, Chess in the Community. And if anybody's interested, the URL, I think they'll probably drop it in the chat, but it's chessinthecommunity.org. And so it's a nonprofit organization that really is dedicated to preparing youth, and this is for males and females, to lead through community engagement and civic empowerment. And so the work really centers around playing chess. How fun is that? That's something that's going to be very appealing to so many people, even if you haven't been exposed to it, right? I think there's tons of benefits just in the mere exposure of something that you had never experienced before. And so they really use chess as a way, as an avenue for learning and for engagement. And it actually helps youth, according to some of the early data that's coming out from that program, with impulsivity and developing critical thinking skills. And if I might add, regarding kind of what drives families to even think about mental health, oftentimes it's with parents, stuff that's happening in the schools. And because we don't have a whole lot of culturally competent school psychology, and I don't want to, I've worked in the schools for years. We had amazing people, but not everyone was culturally competent. And so what we know about the symptoms that come out sometimes in youth, and especially Black youth, oftentimes they're externalizing behaviors that are troubling. Sometimes when you see what's happening and people automatically think of it as a behavior issue, when in fact it's something internal going on. This child may have been exposed to trauma. This child may have experienced a loss. This child may be having family members that are divorcing, but they haven't really felt the need or the permission to speak about what's happening internally. So it shows up as behavioral issues. And so
Right.
Resources such as Chess in the Community, I think, is so wonderful, and what Lorenzo is doing, because I think it does help with that impulsivity that can look like a behavioral issue.
Right. And many of these young kids come from very depressed and violent neighborhoods, and they can experience a murder and the next day go back to school and like nothing happens, and then never ever ask how they felt about what they experienced. And that's very unfortunate. It was something that you said that I wanted to bring up. It'll come back to me.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Barnes, while you're thinking, I do want to invite those that are watching. If you type some questions in the comments, we are going to take a few questions, and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can. One thing I did want to say, because I'm actually watching the comments coming in, is that I'm hearing a lot about the power of one story, right? And particularly whether that's a story about mental health, about suicide loss, about supporting another person, or your own lived experience. And I guess I wonder if each of you have shared something personal about your own story. Wondering if you could just share a little bit about your thoughts about the power of stories and how that might help us connect people to mental health support.
I think stories are very, very powerful. I think that they're becoming a new way of learning. I had a professor when I was in graduate school. That's all he did was tell stories when he was trying to talk to us about some sort of a sociology course. I can't remember, but he did it through stories. People listen to stories. They can relate to stories. When I do my training to it's either faculty, staff, churches, what have you, I do my training for suicide prevention and intervention. It's riddled with stories, and they can relate to that much easier than they can for me to give them a list of things that they need to remember or this and that. And I mean, I have to agree with that. Doreen, did you ask a question?
Oh, just about the power of one's own story in terms of sharing that and also getting people to understand that help is available, particularly if you've lived through a suicidal experience or a suicide loss.
Yes. Anybody else want to address that?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. There's not so much that I can add to that. Dr. Barnes' stories are powerful because they're connecting, and our brain responds. Different regions of the brain responds to stories in a much more different way. And I actually was very happy that you, Doreen, welcomed us to share a little bit about our private journeys, because it's something that as a professional, I don't always feel super comfortable talking about, nor do I always get asked directly about specifically my experience with suicide loss and my child who is on the autism spectrum and how that impacted my own mental health. And, oftentimes when we are getting our training, our graduate training, we're told not to, or we're encouraged not to disclose, not to share our own journey. But I've got to tell you, in the therapy room, especially when you're working with Black and Brown communities, that is a connecting point. And it's not that you go on and on about what's going on with you, but if you share, even through talks that you're having, presentations that you're having, when I meet with faith-based communities, when I talk a little bit about my own journey with mental health, you just see again people sort of like pull in and they're taking the information, and if they look like you or they see themselves in you, they're often wondering to themselves, hey, if she can do it, maybe I can do it too. If this intervention helped her, maybe it can help me as well.
Absolutely. And this is for clinicians, especially because clinicians always feel that they have to follow these tools, these linear tools, well, I use the CSSR, and well, I use CAMS, well, I use this. We have so many tools out there to assess somebody for suicidal behavior to the point where it's so confusing. And especially if they've been trained and they want to get as much training as possible, so they have in their head about 10 different tools. My position is to put the pencil down, come from around the desk, and talk to your client and listen. Just listen. If you listen to what they're saying, you won't need to have to do step by step by step by step. Because when you do that, you miss a lot, and kids fall through the cracks when you are trying to do 1, 2, 3. It's very circular. It's not linear. It's very circular when you're talking to these kids, because they might say something way in left field that you didn't get in your training, but you have to be able to respond to that. So it's very important that clinicians just learn how to listen. Use the tools, because some of them are mandated, but you also have to listen to what your client is saying.
Use common sense. When I was a high school counselor, I would take my Black young men around the track, and I would get so much more out of them than having them sit across from me in a stuffy office. And
Absolutely.
So some might say, ooh, what about confidentiality? What about this? It was a little bit easier because I was a school counselor, so I could have been talking about their schedule. But I found that really made a difference.
Absolutely.
Lorenzo, you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just thinking about my own journey. At 17, I was incarcerated as a juvenile, and I remember being in that situation. During that time, it was a very short period, and I remember it being it was very degrading. Just the interaction that I had with police and how that made me feel emotionally, what that did to my self esteem. Also, what it looked like for me moving forward. Everybody in my community had, or a lot of folks I know had either it was go to jail, or if not going to jail, they maybe didn't live too long. And so those narratives around being a young black man in this society, I believe, is also depressing, and that can drive anyone to not want to obviously to thrive and to move forward. And so that story, particularly in that experience that I went through, is often what I'm able to now share in my work as being an advocate, right? I love the fact that I think is sharing that with other men that look like me, that come from similar communities. And again, it's like as of Dr. Williams was saying, is giving them the go, right? Giving them the green light to say it's okay to talk about how this experience made you feel. That has been probably the most powerful thing in our work. And I think at the root of the training that we're giving these barbers and communities is that we're also giving them the power of their voice really matters, that your story can be shared with so many other, men and other, folks that come around you that really can unlock potential to living your best life and what you desire. And so I always dwell back on my journey personally, to think about how that made me feel. And it also makes me think about a lot of the men that are incarcerated. We think about what the mental health infrastructure has done with our incarceration system and how it plays out along with African American men. And so it really, I had a chance to be able to come out of that, right? I'm here on the other side now, and I'm grateful to tell that story. But there's a lot of men that's not able to tell that story now. And so I'm so glad that I'm being able to be used for that matter. And I just hope that during our work and my interactions, that I can inspire and hopefully help other men that come from the communities and neighborhoods that I've come from to do the same.
I remember what I wanted to say now, because Dr. Williams had mentioned about the very low percentage of physicians, of Black physicians, whether it's physical health or mental health. There's a documentary that just came out, Black Men in White Coats. Please Google that, Black Men in White Coats. And it talks about how we need to sort of introduce these young kids coming up into becoming a physician, because we don't have enough. And as we talk about mentorship and adult protective shields, get them involved in the STEM programs and get them involved in knowing that they can do it. They can become a physician. They can get a medical degree. It's not impossible. And you have your HBCUs that specialize in educating Black physicians. You got Howard, you got McCary, you got Morehouse, you got all these institutions that would work with you. So you don't have to be intimidated by, predominantly white schools. So Black Men in White Coats, please watch the documentary.
Well, I love this conversation we're having, and I see lots of comments and questions coming in. So I think we're going to segue a bit to make sure we get to a few of them. So I'll start. One of the questions is around, can you suggest other community resources to connect folks to Black therapists?
Well, there's an 800 number for the National Medical Association. The National Medical Association is an association with Black physicians, and they do have an 800 number. It used to be on the tip of my tongue, but look up National Medical Association. When you call that 800 number, they can give you a Black physician in your area and in your community.
Yes, that's wonderful. And I also want to mention a couple of resources. The Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation is a foundation that was founded by actress Taraji P. Henson. And so it's a nonprofit working to eradicate the stigma around mental health in the Black community. And for a while, I please don't hold me to this. I don't know if this is still occurring, but for a while they were offering several free counseling sessions to Black males. And so they do have a list of therapists for minority individuals looking for therapy, and 2 other resources. Dr. Donna and I mentioned this before we went live. Therapy for Black Girls. It's very popular, and it's a wonderful organization if you're looking for a Black therapist for women and girls. And then also Therapy for Black Men is another wonderful organization.
I would also add the Loveland Foundation is a group that we've had contact with that does support connecting folks to therapy. So I appreciate that. A question about resources for Black suicide loss survivors. Dr. Barnes, I'm going to send this your way as the founder of NOPCUS.
I've been doing support groups under NOPCUS, the National Organization for People of Color Against Suicide, for years. And I have a registration form right on our page, and very few people have filled it out. So I also do, so that's available, because I've been doing support groups since 2004. And it's very important for people to process their loss through support groups. It really, really helps. So we have that under NOPCUS, but I also have one which all cultures, and in fact, the support group that I have running now is mostly white families, but that's through my LLC, GHB Wellness and Associates, which is listed on the AFSP website. So yes, they're available. Give me a call, either through NOPCUS, NOPCAS.org. Give me a call. I prefer a phone call because then we can have a conversation and an exchange, and I can direct you to where the support groups are.
Dr. Barnes, I have a feeling you might get a few calls after this.
Oh, I doubt it. No, really, I doubt it.
So, Mr. Lewis, there's lots of questions about the Confess Project, and it looks like what folks want to know is a little bit more about how it got started. I think a lot of folks are resonating with it being such an innovative approach. So tell us a little more about the Confess Project, how it got started, and where you see it going.
Absolutely. So again, going back to when I was a kid, I used to go to my aunt's beauty salon. That's where I had my first mentor. It was also where I noticed it was, people that would come in to get their hair done and get their hair cut. They would leave better than they came before because of the conversation and the trust that bubbled up during those moments. To a lot to the point to say that there would be times where I would even see people that would, they were struggling from employment. They was going through a hard time, and literally months after that, because of going back and forth to the barbershop, to the beauty salon rather, they would be much better off than what they were before. At least their mood, right? They was in much more of a better place emotionally. Their spirit was better, and that really stood out to me because that is a very unique way of how, when we're being great peer supporters, that things can really be amazing long term. Because again, what Dr. Williams was saying is everything does not have to end up turning into a medical or mental health diagnosis. That sometimes it can be a matter of just support needed at that moment. So that's how the idea really came about. I went through my own, trauma, and again, I spoke about my story of juvenile incarceration, and I was granted, a couple of years after my release, to go and work in a mental health facility, and I did that for a decade, and that's what introduced the Confess Project. So, what is the Confess Project? We are a national movement that's committed to building a culture of mental health for young men of color, boys and their families, by training Black men, barbers, to be mental health advocates. Till now, to date, we trained over 200 barbers in 16 cities. Our goal this year is to now take that a higher level and train 800 barbers, giving us 1,000 barbers that have been trained. And our goal is to reach now 1 million people through that advocacy and conversation support. Because of the numbers that I spoke about, these guys are reaching about 20 clients a week, or roughly about 100 clients per month. And so the numbers are very tremendous about imagining that type of traffic, getting resources to someone like Dr. Williams, or getting resources to, like the Boris Henson Foundation. These are moments, and we cannot ignore the traffic that's taking place, and so many people being able to get to a place of wellness. And so we really are training them on how to be great listeners, how to eradicate stigma. How do you get someone to call the crisis line? What does that look like? Some people have no idea how to reach out to a therapist. They have no idea that it's sometimes in their insurance support. They have an advocate now that can help them with that. They have a system with the Confess Project in which we help navigate those same resources. So on our website, we host, culturally relevant and Black-led resources that have therapists that folks can also access. So we're more of a resource and an educational component that really, I like to say, may be a one-stop shop for a lot of these folks, because the reality of it is, we don't know if all of the people that are being served in our work may not go to a therapist, or it may be they can't get to one. They may not have the money for it. This may be the last stop for them. And so I'm really excited that we're being very upfront about how we're doing the work, but also that support long-term really turns into a full wraparound for communities. And so that's a little bit of how it works and what it looks like. More can be learned at our website at theconfessproject.com. We also have a barber training that is online. So a lot of people say, well, how does it work? We have a training that breaks it down step by step. I'm sure to be attached here in the comments below. And so people can actually see what it looks like for someone to hold clippers and have a conversation and actually change the lives of someone there in 45 minutes. I mean, it's very rewarding. So I'm excited just again to share more, and really glad to be connected to this.
That's excellent, Lorenzo. And you're 100% correct that sometimes that is the last stop, because sometimes they don't even have to go to a clinician. If they can just get it out and talk about it, sometimes that's just all they need. So you're 100% correct. It's probably the last stop for many of them. So that's good. It's excellent.
Awesome.
So we have a couple more questions, and I love hearing about all of this, and I know I want to hear more. So I'm really encouraging those that are tuning in to check out some of the web links that we're putting in the comments about the organizations that have been mentioned. I think you're gonna start to learn a lot more about these great innovative community approaches. One other thing that I did want to mention really briefly, that some of our viewers may be new to AFSP. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention has chapters in all 50 states. You can find your chapter by going to our website, afsp.org/chapters. And these are volunteer chapters. We'll take anyone with an interest in suicide prevention or addressing the impact of suicide. But we also have prevention programs in the community, as well as loss and support programs. So I know a number of people have commented during this live stream that they have experienced a suicide loss. We do have support programs for that as well. One question that's come in that I'm wondering if each of you can just take a moment to talk about. If you're worried about someone right now in your community, or if you yourself are struggling, can you give us a few pearls of wisdom or advice? What would you say to someone? How would you encourage them to either support themselves or support the person they're concerned about? Dr. Williams, why don't we start with you?
Yes, absolutely. I love that question. So the work that I do with parents, I love it. One of the questions that is commonly asked is, how do I support my child? And that makes sense. And what I say to parents is, you make sure that you have the support that you need, and that no child, no adult should have to battle an emotional distress, traumatic distress, grief, loss alone. And I know that many parents fear talking about depression and suicide either to their kids, or even entertaining the notion for themselves will somehow encourage it or reinforce it. And so if you're hurting out there, if you are a parent, if you're not a parent, if you're an adult, or you work with kids, and you're struggling, I want you to know that it is absolutely imperative that you reach out to someone. And it doesn't have to be, as we've been talking about, it doesn't have to be a therapist, a psychiatrist, but anyone, any loved one, anyone in your community, anyone that you have a sense of familiarity that can support you through this journey. Oftentimes we all need just sort of an emotional exhale. And so that's really the last thing that I would like to offer is, if you're a parent specifically, you're concerned about your kid, make sure that you're okay, and make sure that you have the support that you need.
And I would like to add to that, everything Dr. Williams said was on point. And if there is someone in particular that you're worried about, it could be a neighbor, it could be someone in your family, please don't be afraid to ask them if they're thinking of ending their life, because most of the time, most people think, and they still think that today, if you mention it, then you're going to put the idea in their head. But trust me, if you think that they're thinking about it, there's a possible chance that they are, especially if you think that they're thinking about it. So you need to make sure that you have a nice, quiet place, that you're willing to listen. And when you listen to them, allow them to do all of the talking. Please don't try to find solutions, because they don't want to hear about solutions. Many times clinicians always think that they got to find solutions. Oh, well, they're upset about this. They got an F. They did this. They did that. Well, let me, try to help them figure out how they can get through that problem. It's not necessarily that problem. Usually when someone starts thinking of suicide, it's a number of things that pile up. It's like this one cup, you fill it, one more drop of water will overflow, and they stop thinking that death is an option because of the number of things that are accumulating. So you need to let them talk about their feelings so that they can get it out. It's like you stick a pin in a balloon and it inflates, and but it just allow them to talk. And please listen. Don't try to find solutions, not at that particular time. Let them do all the talking. And if there's something you don't understand, ask them to help you understand. But the important thing is to listen, and don't talk about, oh, yeah, that happened to me when I was your age, and start telling your story. It's not a good time to do that. It's a time to just listen to what they have to say.
Lorenzo?
Again, echoing what these two ladies have already said, I think a lot of it is, taking time to understand where people are coming from. One thing that I've noticed, I'm particularly speaking about, the men that I work with, even communities at large, is that sometimes, again, people they don't feel heard. They don't feel celebrated. They don't feel like they're being listened to, because they're being they're telling their experience, and then someone wants to, figure out a way to just solve the problem, when it's just a matter of, being validated and being heard, and feeling shared.
Absolutely.
And so I think that in itself is what it could be a huge issue. And so if we can just slow down and really start to listen and understand the walk of life. It goes back to, we talked about culture competency is truly understanding and being aware. And so it's very complex in the Black community to start thinking about what trauma looks like, what it looks like to have fathers incarcerated, and people not growing up with, family members, or may have seen community violence happen, or seeing people not lose their life to violence, etc. We think about these more macro issues that we hear about often. Then we can imagine the way that people are processing, or if they're not processing it at all. And so it's just taking time to really understand the walks of life of individuals to support them, and so that we don't see that their life becomes destructive long term.
It's great. I mean, what each of you have shared is so important to this discussion today. In our final moments, I want to just invite the three of you, is there anything you wanted to share that we didn't get to today? Dr. Williams, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think, again, sort of sticking with the work that I do with parents, sometimes it's it's like talking about race, right? Which I've talked a lot about, how to talk to your kids about race. Anything that's difficult, sometimes we want to put it off, right? Especially when we think our kids are too young to understand, or we don't want to put something in their head. But the way that I instruct or encourage parents to talk about mental health is to do it in a non-judgmental manner, as if they would a physical health issue, such as a cold, and just helping that the child understand that sometimes we have colds. Many people have colds. And sometimes people who have colds, that cold will turn into pneumonia. It doesn't mean that that's always going to happen, but when it's pneumonia, you need a higher level of care. That is a critical issue that needs to be taken care of immediately. So when there's sadness, which we all experience, that's one thing, but that sadness could be prolonged and lead to depression and cause you not to engage in the activities that you love. And when that happens, that's when we need to seek additional support.
Absolutely, especially if it goes on for too long. when you're not engaging in what you love to do. Because many times these young kids, piggybacking off of what Dr. Williams said, many times these young kids don't understand why they can't get up in the morning, why they can't do the things that they like to do, and self-loathing sets in because they don't get it. They don't understand why they're not doing what they like to do anymore. So it's a lot. But I wanted to introduce this book, Black Suicide, by Dr. Alton Kirk. There's plenty of stories. He writes maybe in the first section, but there's plenty of, we're talking about stories, there's plenty of stories in the back where he interviewed a lot of survivors telling their stories. So you might want to just pick this up, Black Suicide by Dr. Alton Kirk, and you can read a lot of stories by African Americans who have lost someone to suicide. And then again, you know, you also have my support groups through NOPCUS or my support groups through DHB Wellness and Associates.
Thank you. Lorenzo, anything you want to add? Oh, you're on mute.
I apologize. I think the one thing that I would like to share again, anyone who may be in a community that's particularly on right now, we're looking at, New York City and Philadelphia, Boston, San Francisco, LA, as well as Dallas. And so, and beyond that, we're mostly in Southern and Midwest places. We're looking to build a community of not only advocates, but at the end of the day, these are people that are really our families, people that are part of our villages, what we call it. And so we're looking to retain more barbers, more particularly in the work that we do, and to seeing that this can continue to help people get to resources that has already been explained here on this call. And so I'm really excited again to continue that effort and seeing how we can better connect to serving our communities and seeing that people can be well in their life. So
thank you. And thanks to the three of you today. I mean, this conversation, I can't believe that the hour is almost up. It has flown by, and I've learned so much from each of you. And at AFSP, we do have lots of information about warning signs of suicide and how to understand risk. So I'd encourage you to go to our website if suicide's a topic that you're new to or is not very familiar. There's lots of information at afsp.org. Thanks again to the three of you. I look forward to the work we'll do together. And thanks to those of you that have tuned in today for this town hall. Please share this discussion. It's on our AFSP Facebook page. Share it with anyone you think might be interested in hearing what we talked about today. Thanks to the three of you, and thanks to everyone for attending.
Thank you, Doreen.
Thank you.